You're not here by accident. You didn't just click this video, you felt it. Somewhere deep inside you, there's a storm that's been silent for too long. You've been underestimated, overlooked, and labeled by people who never saw your fire. But that's about to change. This isn't another feel-good speech. This is a mirror, a wake-up call, a reminder of who you really are beneath the noise, the doubt, the silence. You didn't come this far to play small. You came to dominate. You came to break patterns. You came to flip the script. They thought you were done. They haven't even met the real you yet. So sit up, lock in, because by the time this video ends, you'll remember exactly why the struggle had to happen and why you were built for all of it. They walked into the room with suits stitched in boardrooms, backed by inheritance and history, thinking power is handed, not earned. They had resources, money, networks, legacies. You had hunger. The kind that doesn't sleep. The kind that gnaws at your ribs when everyone else is resting. The kind that makes the silence scream louder than any applause you were never given. They relied on tools. You became one. Sharpened by rejection. Carved by pain. Forged in nights no one saw you survive. They drank coffee from polished mugs while you tasted dirt. Blood in that bitter thing called doubt, and you turned it all into fuel. See, the world hands out advantages like candy in the right neighborhood, but no one tells you what to do when all you have is grit, cracked knuckles, and eyes that have seen betrayal up close. No one warns them about someone like you, a wild card born from nothing, loyal to no comfort zone, trained in the shadow. While they celebrated minor victories, you treated every setback like a boot camp. Every no turned your spine into steel. They had mentors. You had mirrors, staring at your broken self, daring it to rise. They had applause. You had echoes. And you still made the silence sing. They mapped their future with advisors and strategies, thinking they were playing chess. But you became the storm that flipped the board. No calculation prepares you for someone who has nothing to lose and everything to prove. Someone whose desperation mutated into obsession. Someone whose heart doesn't beat for likes, but for legacy. You didn't want to win just for you. You wanted to rewrite what people like you could even dare to become. They thought wealth could carry them, but you carried every insult, every dismissal, every cracked door slammed in your face. And you built a kingdom from those broken hinges. This isn't just about success. This is about redemption. Not from others, but from your past. From every day you felt invisible. From every time you swallowed your voice. That hunger wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about finally seeing yourself right. They wanted comfort. You needed transformation. And that need, that relentless need, it became your weapon. It kept you building when others slept. It kept you moving when your body said quit. It kept you obsessed when logic said stop. Because the fire inside you didn't just burn. It consumed. It purified. It recreated the version of you no one dared imagine. So yes, they had resources, but you had hunger, and hunger is the one currency that can't be stolen, bought, or inherited. It's carved into your soul. It roars louder than privilege. It lasts longer than luck. And when the dust settles and the lights dim, it won't be the one with the most toys who win. It'll be the one who refused to starve, even when the world handed him nothing but crumbs. They looked around, counted heads, and your name wasn't even on the list. Your seat wasn't assigned, your invitation never sent. But you walked in anyway, not because someone opened the door, but because you kicked it down. You didn't ask for permission, you weren't raised with the rules they played by. You learned to maneuver through closed doors and fake smiles. You weren't supposed to be in that room, but once you got in, everything shifted. Suddenly, the ones with polished resumes and clean reputations couldn't hold the attention you commanded with your scars. You see, hunger speaks a language that's older than privilege. When you talk, it's not just words, it's war drums echoing every night you went to bed with an unfinished dream. Every time they overlooked you, doubted you, disrespected you, you turned that into velocity. They could feel it. The room could feel it. Not because you said something impressive, but because you were something unforgettable. You were the energy that made the air sharp. You weren't raised to fit in. You were built to flip the script. And let's be real, you didn't walk in with fancy titles. You walked in with wounds. But those wounds weren't weaknesses. They were credentials. Every scar on you told a story of survival, of growth, of fire that didn't burn you. It branded you. You didn't have a map to follow. You became the map. You weren't trying to be them. You were too busy becoming something they could never replicate. Because hunger doesn't copy. Hunger created, and they noticed your presence. Not because of the clothes you wore, not because of the words you spoke, but because of the vibration you carried. The frequency of a soul that had been to war with itself and came out louder. You made them uncomfortable, and you were supposed to, because your very existence was proof that their formula wasn't bulletproof. You came from where ambition dies young, where dreams are ridiculed, where every win feels like robbery because you were never meant to survive, let alone thrive. But here's the thing, you didn't just survive, you recalibrated the atmosphere. You didn't demand respect, you commanded it. With silence, with stares, with stillness that held more truth than their entire speeches. Because when you fought the kind of battles you fought, you don't need validation. You are the validation. You've already paid your dues in pain and loneliness, and every single second you kept going when it made no sense to. They may not say it out loud, but deep down they know, they feel it. The imbalance, the shift, the storm sitting quietly in your bones, just waiting. You weren't meant to be here, but that's what makes your presence seismic. Because you didn't come through the front door, you crawled through the trenches, rose through the ashes, and now you don't just walk into rooms, you redefine them. So the next time someone asks who let you in here, you smile. You don't answer with words, you let your work speak. You let your hunger echo, because you're not here for claps. You're not here to impress. You're here to dominate silently, relentlessly, completely. You were never supposed to make it, but now you're here, and they can't unsee you. They designed the world like it was a machine with rules, with ranks, with roles. Blueprints built for people like them. Expectations dressed in tailored suits. Paths cleared before their feet touched the ground. They built the system to work for them. But here you are. A glitch. A break in the pattern. An error they can't debug. You weren't meant to be here. Not in their meetings. Not in their arenas, not in their conversations, but you forced your way in, with cracked hands, with a mind wired for war, with a soul that didn't ask for permission, only purpose. See, glitches don't apologize for existing. They disrupt, they confuse, they break comfort zones. You weren't built in the system, you were built in the cracks. Raised by chaos, sculpted by setbacks, trained by trials. While they followed protocol, you trusted instinct. While they practiced etiquette, you mastered endurance. You made chaos your strategy. They built networks, you became lightning, unpredictable, raw, unstoppable. You weren't trying to be understood, you were trying to be undeniable, and they couldn't prepare for that. They spent years perfecting a formula. You burned the formula and rewrote the equation, because their logic didn't account for someone who didn't fit, someone who didn't fold, someone who turned every you can't into a new kind of fuel. You weren't the plan, you were the problem. And problems like you don't go away. You grow louder, bolder, bigger. You learned how to speak in silence, move in shadows, and still strike with the force of 1,000 doubters swallowed whole. You didn't just find a seat at the table. They heard the glass shatter as you kicked in the door. You weren't supposed to exist in their forecast. But storms like you don't ask for space. They take it. So now they whisper your name in confusion. They call you reckless, intense, impossible to manage. Good. Because the glitch isn't meant to be managed. It's meant to remind the system that perfection isn't permanent. And that hunger, that rage, that glitch in your soul, it's still upgrade. They mistook your silence for surrender. Thought the absence of your voice meant the absence of strength. But silence is not weakness. It's a weapon. It's the stillness before the storm. It's the breath before the scream. It's the moment where the world thinks you're done and you're just beginning. While they were loud, you were listening. While they were performing, you were planning. Every quiet second was a calculation. Every glance away from the spotlight was a lesson in shadows. They couldn't hear the fire in you, but it was burning hotter than their noise ever could. Weakness isn't when you don't speak. It's when you don't believe. And you, even in your quietest hour, believed in yourself. Even when the world didn't clap. Even when nobody asked you how you were holding up. You kept holding on. You didn't need a stage. You needed a reason. And your reason was never to impress. It was to evolve. They couldn't feel your storm building because it didn't come with lightning right away. It started deep, in the places where you suffered in silence, where you buried your pain, where you turned your breakdowns into blueprints. And now here you are, not loud, not chaotic, but powerful in a way they never saw coming. See, the loudest ones, they're often just echoes. But you're the origin, the real thing. The kind of force that doesn't need noise to make an impact. The kind of presence that doesn't have to scream to change the temperature in the room. People started realizing it too late. By the time they noticed you were rising, it was already over. You had moved past them. You had turned every ignored moment into ammunition, every overlooked strength into strategy. You built a whole empire in silence, brick by brick, behind closed doors when no one was watching. And now that you're here, they want to know how. They want to know when. But the truth is, they were never supposed to see it coming. Because you were never weak. You were just working. You were healing. You were learning. And now you're speaking through your success, through your resilience, through the fact that you never gave up, even when the silence was deafening. You didn't need their permission to rise. You didn't need their validation to grow. Because you always knew power isn't proven in noise. It's revealed in results. They thought you were just another face in the crowd. Another struggler, another person trying to figure life out like everyone else. They watched you in silence, judged your quiet moves, and never once imagined you were the original, the blueprint, the one who wasn't following the trend, but creating it. They had no idea that while they were copying each other, you were crafting something they couldn't replicate. Something born from raw pain, stitched with fire, and molded in moments nobody saw. You weren't just living, you were inventing. Every failure, every no, every locked door. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It was your path designing itself with brutal honesty. They underestimated you because you didn't announce every step. You didn't scream for recognition. You just moved, quietly, steadily, like the calm before a transformation no one could predict. And now the very people who ignored your grind are trying to imitate the glow. But here's the thing about being the blueprint. What you are can't be cloned. Your story isn't a template, it's a legacy. You didn't read about strength in a book. You learned it in the dark. You didn't borrow confidence. You built it from scars and solitude. The ones who watched you from the outside thought they understood what you were becoming. They saw the setbacks, the delays, the heartbreaks, and thought you were done. They never realized all of it was intentional. All of it was construction. While they chased shortcuts, You were laying foundations that would outlast everything. They were moving fast. You were moving right. They were making noise. You were making history. And now they look confused, shocked, envious, because what you've become is not only undeniable, it's untouchable. You didn't just rise. You rewrote the rules. Let them wonder, let them dig through your past trying to find the formula. They'll never find it, because you are the formula. You are the process, the pain, the patience, the persistence. You're not just someone who made it, you're someone who made the map. The person others will study one day when they ask, how did they do it? But deep down you'll know they could never do it your way, because they weren't built like you. They didn't feel what they didn't bleed what you bled. You didn't have a guidebook. You were the guide. Every twist, every collapse, every moment that could have broken you just made you sharper. So now when they stare in awe or disbelief, remember this. You were never lost. You were never late. You were the blueprint all along. You didn't walk through that storm just to whisper about it. You didn't pull yourself out of the wreckage, stitch yourself back together, learn how to breathe again, only to stay silent. No. You healed loudly. You rose in fragments. You screamed into the void. You cried yourself empty. You rebuilt your identity with bloody hands and sleepless nights. That kind of healing, that kind of transformation, it demands to be felt. It demands to be heard. They want you to be quiet because your strength terrifies them. Your scars make them uncomfortable. Your honesty, your fire, your refusal to shrink back into the version of you that made them comfortable, it threatens everything they know. But you didn't survive for their comfort. You didn't crawl through broken glass to make other people feel okay about their complacency. You didn't bury pieces of yourself just to be palatable. You healed to become the truth. And the truth doesn't apologize for being loud. This world wants silence from the ones who broke the cycle, who refused to be victims, who didn't stay stuck. But that silence, that's a slow death. You didn't earn your peace just to keep it secret. You didn't go through all that pain to act like you're fine now, and it never happened. You're not fine. You're powerful. You're not healed just for yourself. You're healed to lead, to shock, to be the mirror that shows others what survival really looks like. You speak because your voice is proof. Proof that healing isn't linear, that it's messy, violent, beautiful. Proof that survival isn't about bouncing back. It's about breaking through. You speak because every word you say is a lifeline to someone who's drowning. Where you once were, your story is medicine. Your journey is revolution. You don't owe anyone quiet. You owe the world your roar. Don't minimize it. Don't dilute it. Don't make it pretty. Tell it the way it happened. The betrayal, the loneliness, the madness, the moment you almost gave up. Say it all, because the rawness of it, that's what makes it real. That's what makes it yours. They don't have to clap, they don't even have to believe you. But they'll feel it, and that's what matters. So speak. Scream if you have to. Fill the room with the truth of what it took to become who you are. Let them hear the ache. Let them witness the rise. Because you didn't heal to hide. You healed to lead. You healed to disrupt. You healed to change everything. When they saw they couldn't break you, they tried to bury you in doubt. When your resilience burned through the lies they fed you, they panicked. Because nothing terrifies weak people more than someone who refuses to be controlled. They didn't expect you to survive the fall. They sure as hell didn't expect you to rise with fire in your eyes and steel in your spine. And when your survival became a threat to their illusion of power, They tried something else. They tried to silence you. But here's the thing. Silence is a weapon too. It's subtle. It creeps in. They tell you you're too much. They call your passion aggressive. They dress up their discomfort as advice. They say things like, don't bring up the past, or why can't you just move on? Not because they care about your healing, but because your voice unsettles them. Your truth exposes them. Your power shakes their foundations. They couldn't destroy you physically, so they moved to the battlefield of identity. They wanted you to question who you are, to downplay your story, to rewrite your pain as a phase, to gaslight your truth into something digestible. They hoped you'd retreat back into the version of yourself that didn't make noise, that didn't demand space, that didn't fight back. But you didn't heal to be humble about it. You didn't rebuild to become invisible. You didn't earn your freedom just to ask for permission to speak. You owe them nothing, not your silence, not your politeness, not your shrinking. Every time you speak, you fracture the illusion they tried to build around you. You remind them that you survived them, that you outgrew the box they tried to shove you, and that enrages them. Because it proves they never had power over you in the first place. It was always borrowed. It was always fragile. It was always fake. Let them flinch. Let them fume. Let them call you loud, difficult to intend. That's just code for you stopped playing small. That's just their way of saying we don't know how to handle someone we can't control anymore. But this is the part where you stop explaining yourself. This is the chapter where you speak with no filter, no apology, no sugarcoating. You've earned that voice with blood, with breakdowns, with lonely nights and brutal mornings. You've paid in full, so don't you dare go quiet now. You didn't survive to be silenced. You survived to be unignorable.